How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Ches, Daf 18 of Masechta Gittin, friends. The first Amud, we kind of talk about like timey kind of things, about get, but also shtikul ksube. And then we explore weiter Reb Shimon's opinion that even if you write the get today, you could sign it at night and it's okay. We're going to explore that a shtikul, and then that will take us to the next mission on Daf Yud Tes Amud Aleph that we will commence with tomorrow. Let's go weiter. Okay, so we're going to start all the way at the bottom of Yud Zayin Amud Beis, last line of the Daf. Amar Ravina LeRave. So says Ravina to Rave, Kosve ve'osve b'schisesei di'imifaisa tipayes mai. So remember, right? We're discussing the time written in the get, right? The Gemara started out, Mipnei matiknu zman begittin. How come the Chacham decided that we should put a time, the time that the get was written? How come we should put that time in the get? But Ravina to Rave, what if a fellow writes a get and then he sticks it in his pocket, for almost like just in case, because he says, okay, I have this get, I'm not going to give it yet, but let me just keep it in my pocket. And if we make up, then Gevaldig, I don't need to use it. If we don't make up, so then I'll give it. But what's the point then of the time? The time that it was written could be very different. If they don't end up making up, and he ends up giving her the get, so he ends up giving her the get at a much later date. What's the point of the time that's written on it? So Amarle, so Rava says to Ravina, look, it's not such a gewaldige thing to get divorced. It's not such a geschmacke, enjoyable thing. A person's not gonna. The Chacham weren't assuming that a person's gonna just want to walk around with a divorce, with the get in his pocket. So that was, they didn't really take that matziv into account. Ravina says to Rav Ashi, this is a gewaldige kasha. Maybe some of you were even thinking about this kasha. That what about a get that comes from Chutz La'aretz, before they had airplanes, right? If you imagine you're bringing a get on a train, it could take a few days. So, or even this is even before trains, right? Sorry. Right, that they can write the get in Nisan, but it'll take 6 months just to get to where it needs to go. Right, from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, or whatever it is. What's the point of writing a date on a get if Mimanav Shach it's going to take a very long time until it even arrives to be delivered to the wife? Amalei Hanu Kala Islu. So Rav Ashi says, good question. But when a get comes from Medina Sayam, right? You have a situation. Let's say you have a woman in Eretz Yisrael. The husband is far away in Timbuktu. It takes 6 months for the get to get there. Finally, the wife gets her get, and there's Kala. There's the Yentis in the bungalow colony Shabbos afternoon. People talking. And so therefore it's clear that everybody knows, okay, in this case it's not going to be about the time that was written in Timbuktu. They're going to have to bring other proofs about when it was actually given. Now so that's clear that in that case, the date will not be the determining factor. Itmar, it was stated Meimosai Monin Leget. So as we learned about, who even knows where, probably Ksubis and Yuvamis, I don't know. So, do we even, Yuvamis, Membes, did it not come up in Ksubis? What do you guys remember? Anyways, right, so we said that a woman who gets divorced, she should not get remarried for 3 months. Fine. We said that if she just had a baby, then what's it, 2 years? Wait, 2 years, is that what it was? Wait, 2 years? 3 years? 2 years? Who remembers? Okay. Itmar. It was stated, Meimosai on the get. So at what point does the 3 months start? Rav Mishas Nesina. Rav says from the time that she receives the get. Ushmuel Mishas Ksiva, where Shmuel says it's not about when she receives the get, it's about the date that's written on the get, from the time that it's written. Maskif Rav Nosson bar Hoshaya. So Rav Nosson bar Hoshaya asked the following kasha. Lishmuel. According to Shmuel, who says that it's not about when they received the get, it's about when the get was written. What about in a situation where you have a husband who's going traveling traveling to some faraway place, and he gives a get to both? He has two wives. He gives a get to both of his wives on the same day before he leaves. The thing is, one of the gets that he gave was written right. The get that he gave to one of his wives was written that day. The get that he gave to the other one of his wives was actually written a month before. So according to Shmuel, 2 months down the road, one of the wives are going to be able to get remarried, but the other wife still has another month to go. And that's a little bit crazy, right? So again, Yomer, they're going to say, Shtei Noshim b'chatzar achas, you can have two wives in this, who are co-wives. Zoh Asura, V'zo Muteris, it comes 2 months later, one of them is Mutter, the other one is still Asura, even though they both received the get on the same exact day. So Amar Le Abai, so Abai says to Rav Nosson bar Hoshaya, look, Zozman Gita Mechiach Aleo, V'Zozman Gita Mechiach Aleo. Look, if anybody is saying, wow, this is crazy, how could it be? Just look at the documents. It says it black on white. It says the date was 3 months ago, the date was 2 months ago. I mean, pretty easy to prove. It's not such a mind-blowing thing. Just look at the date on the document. Tani Kavosi de Rav, Tani Kavosi de Shmuel. We have a Braise supporting Rav, who says that it's from the time that the get is given, and we have a Braise supporting Shmuel, who says it's from the time that the get is written. Tani Kavosi de Rav. We have a Braise supporting Rav, who says it's from the time that the get is given. Hasholeach get liishto, that if a fellow sends a get to his wife, v'nishto shaliach ba'derech shlosha chodashim, and it took 3 months for the messenger to get the get to the wife. Mishegia get liyodo tzrich lamtin gimel chodashim. Once she receives the get, she now has to wait another 3 months before she can get remarried. So we see that it's from the time that she receives it, it's 3 months after that. But a get yoshin and choshishin, and we're not concerned. But what about a get yoshin? What's a get yoshin? A get yoshin is that if after the get was written, they had intercourse, they had bia, so then the get is cancelled. The get is no good. So, but we're not, even though it's taking 3 months for the shaliach to get there, and another 3 months until she gets remarried. I guess 3 months for the get to get there, and until then she's not divorced. We're not concerned about a get yoshin, that maybe they had intercourse in between, because sharei lo nisiachid ima, because obviously they were like in different countries, so not really shaykh. Tanya Kavosi de Shmuel, we have a brayso supporting Shmuel. Hamashlish get liishto. If you have a fellow who's going away on some trip, and he gives a get not to his wife, but he gives it to some trusted associate. Ve'omer lo, and he says to his trusted associate, Al titneu la ela lachar gimel chodashim, wait 3 months before giving the get to my wife. Misha nisanu la mutaris linosi miyad, that once she receives the get 3 months later, she can immediately get remarried. V'la get yoshin and choshishin, and we're not concerned about, well, isn't it a get yoshin, that maybe they had bia after it was written but before she received it? No, we're not concerned because he wasn't around, he was traveling someplace. So we see there that it's 3 months from the time it's written, not 3 months from the time that it's received. Rav Kahana, Rav Papi, Rav Ashi, Avde Mishas Ksivo. So if Kahana, Rav Papi, and Rav Ashi held like Shmuel from the time that it's written, Rav Papi, Rav Huna, Bredi of Yeshua, Avdi Mishas Desina, whereas Rav Papi and Rav Huna, Bredi of Yeshua did it from the time that it was given, like Rav, Vilchsa Mishas Ksiva, the halacha is from the time that it's written, like Shmuel. Fine. Itmar, it was stated, Mei Mosai Ksuba Mishametes, that from what point is a ksuba mishametes? What does that mean? First of all, we're not talking about the get here. We're talking about the ksube. The ksube, of course, right? Meaning when a woman gets married, she receives a ksuba document, which means that in the case that they get divorced with a get, she can then take out this ksuba document and collect whatever she's owed, based on the document, whatever it says in there. So now there is a halacha called Shmitas Ksofim. There's a halacha called Shmitas Ksofim. Shmitas Ksofim is that when Shemitah comes, right? Of course, everybody knows that Shemitah is when you don't work the land, but there's also Shmitas Ksofim, which means that any loans, right? That if Shimon lent Reuven $1,000 and it's not paid back before Shemitah, comes Shemitah, it cancels the loan. Reuven no longer needs to pay back Shimon. Now, Hillel, of course, created a pruzbul, which is a way that enables Shimon to essentially get his money back still. But the shaila is, in terms of the ksubah, what happens when Shemitah comes? What happens when Shemitah comes? When Shemitah comes, a wife has a document that essentially says that she's owed money. So what happens when Shemitah comes? Is her ksubah invalidated? So itmar meimosai ksubah mishametes. At what point does a ksubah basically become unsomethingable, unactionable, unsomethingable? At what point does the ksubah become unsomethingable? Right? That meaning, while she's married, it's not actually like. Okay, one second. If Shimon lends Reuven $1,000, and Reuven writes him a document that can be, I feel like I'm not transferred, but can be not swapped either, but can be something. But basically, if Shimon is in possession of a document that says that he's owed $1,000, that's like an actionable document that he could take to Bezdin and say, look, I'm owed that money. Come Shemitah, that loan is gone. Right? He's actually owed that money. Right? Shimon is owed that money. Comes Shmitas Ksofim, that loan is wiped out. The thing is, for a ksuba, it's not exactly like that, because she's only owed money if they get divorced. As long as they're married, that document is not actually collectible. Maybe that's the word I'm thinking of, collectible. Right? As long as they're married, that ksuba is not actually collectible, so it wouldn't be shaykh to Shmitas Ksofim. Now, once they get divorced, now that ksuba becomes collectible. Now, at what point does the ksuba become collectible, which would mean that comes Shemitah, it wipes it out? Is it when she receives the get? Does the ksuba automatically become collectible? Now she can collect her what she's owed, and come Shemitah and wipes it out? Or, so says the Gemara, at what point is a ksuba considered like a loan document that comes Shemitah and it wipes it out? Once she receives part of the payment of the ksuba, that when she receives part of the payment of the ksuba, vitizkov, and then the rest of it now becomes be'etzim a loan, right? Meaning she receives, right, once she already collects part of it, so now the rest of it, right, so she receives part of it, and now the rest of it is basically she's owed that money. It's like a loan that she's able to collect. At that point, it gets canceled and she can no longer collect it at Shemitah. Ushmuel Omar, and says Shmuel, meaning once Shemitah comes, she can no longer collect it. Shmuel Omar says Shmuel, Pagma, that once she collects part of it, Afal Pi Shelo Zakva, even though she didn't establish the rest of it as a loan. The Gemara at the in a few lines is going to explain what that means. Zakva, and if she established it as a loan, Afal Pi Shelo Pagma, even though she hasn't collected any of it, already come Shemitah and it will nullify it. Tani Kavasi Rav, Tani Kavasi Dishmos. We have a brisa like Rav who says that it's tifgom and tizkov, and we have a brisa supporting Shmuel who says that it's one or the other. Tani Kavasi Rav, right? So Tani Kavasi Rav, Tani Kavasi Shmuel. Tani Kavasi Rav, the brisa supporting Rav is meimosai ksuba mishametes. At what point is a ksuba does it become nullified in Shemitah? because of Shmitas Ksofim. Misha Tifkom Vitizkov. Once she receives part of the ksuba, and then the rest is established as a loan. And again, the Gemara is going to explain in a few lines what that means. Pogma velo zakfa. Now, if she received part of it but didn't establish the rest of it as a loan, zakfa, if she established the entire ksuba as a loan, velo pogma and didn't receive anything, eina mishametes, so then shmitas ksofim does not apply ad shetifkom vitizkov, until she both receives part of it and what? Who the heck is here? What the heck? Yo, who's here? Who's that, Mom? What, the trip's over? I'm so confused. I thought they were away the whole day. What time is it? I'm so confused. I thought they were coming home at like 8 at night. What time is it? I left a mess up there. I didn't clean up. Ah, busted. They caught me eating. They're not supposed to know that I eat. Whatever. Busted. Dag nabbit. Well. Oh, wait. So no, oh, okay. Interesting. I thought they weren't coming home for like another 3 hours. I thought I was going to be asleep by the time they came home. Interesting. Yeah, wow. I'm like, was not expecting that. Oh, change of events. Okay. Change of events. All right. Well, events changed. All right. Wow. So now I'm in the middle of recording Babylon Talmud. Oh, I hope it doesn't get loud. Quick. Oh, okay. So it's not mishametes until it's tifkom and tizkov. So that's the brayse that's supporting Rav. Tanekavosa de Shmuel. We have a brayse supporting Shmuel. Okay, we have a brayse supporting Shmuel. Ones viknas ufitui. So, okay, when it comes to, so onus and pitui is like onus umafate, right? Rape and seduction, right? There's a fine associated with that, viknas, as well as, well, onus, I think it's all, he has to marry her, and if he doesn't marry her, then it's a knas, or there's a knas anyways, and then I think maybe, or what is it? It's a certain, I have to remember, but there's a knas associated with both onus and mafate, and then the knas that over here is talking about by Motzi Shemra, uksubas isha, as well as the ksuba of a woman, shezakfon b'milvet, that they made into a loan, mishamtin, so that shayat l'shmitas ksafim, even if it wasn't pagma, even if it wasn't received at all, ve'im lav, and if it wasn't zakfon b'milvet, so then ein mishamtin, so then there's no shmitas ksafim. So we see that this is like Shmuel, who says that it's even one or the other. Mei mosain is kofim b'milvet. So now what new? So when we say that it's finally, right, I was promising the whole time. So what does it mean? Kofim b'milvet. Mishas amoda bedin. Once she goes to Bezdin, and Bezdin establishes that she's owed this money, at that point it's considered like it's a loan that she's owed, and at that point, so according to Shmuel, that would be enough to make it shaykh to shmitas ksofim, whereas Rav would say that no, you would need to receive some of it as well as establish in Bezdin it as a loan. Amr Shmuel says Shmuel, ksube kimaise Bezdin dami, says Shmuel that the ksube of that a ksube at a wedding, at a chasen, a ksube is like a maise Bezdin dami, right? So now we had learned in Masechta Ksubis that the whole concept of a ksube is what's called a t'nai Bezdin, right? That she's entitled to receive the mana masayim, right? Mana for almana, right? B'sula masayim v'almana mana. Remember all this stuff ages ago. So it says Shmuel that ksube kimaise Bezdin, that a ksube is like an activity of Bezdin, damya. Ma'maise Bezdin nichtovim bayom v'nichtovim balayla. Just like if Bezdin writes a document, so it would be written during the day and signed at night. Av ksuba nichteves bayom v'nichtemes balayla. So also a ktuba, right? Not a get. A ksuba can be written during the day and signed at night. Fine. That was what Shmuel said, right? Right. That was Shmuel. So now, ksubasa de Reb Chia by Rav, the ksube of Reb Chia by Rav, Rav's son Reb Chia, ichtuv bayom v'ichtuv balayla, was written during the day and signed at night. So have Rav Hasam v'lo amalu v'lo midi, and Rav was there obviously at the chasana, and he witnessed them writing it during the day and writing the ksuba during the day and signing it at night. V'lo amalu v'lo midi, and he didn't say gunish, he didn't say anything. So let's say that he holds like Shmuel, that a ksuba can be written during the day and signed at night. So asukin ba'oso inyan habu, to which the Gemara says that is not a proof, because since they were sort of busy with the wedding the whole time and there was no interruption, right? They were like at. So interestingly, it sounds like from Rashi that like what does Rashi say? Rashi says. What does Rashi say? Af ksuba. So Rashi says in the Dibra Masel af ksuba, like 15 lines from the bottom. Mishas ksiva denichnesal lechupa dekev chasanas uchayil shibuda. It sounds like they would. Sounds like what? They would write the ksuba under the chuppah, maybe, or like it definitely seems like they would be under the chuppah and it wasn't signed yet, which is interesting. That's what I understand from Rashi. I don't know, maybe I'm not understanding it right, but we always, of course, sign the ksuba before the chuppah. But anyways, so since they were busy, right? From the time that it was written until the time it was signed, they were at the chasana. They were busy with the chasana. So therefore, Rav, right? That's why Rav was cool with it. So it's not meaning Shmuel says even if they weren't busy with it the whole time, right? Simply a ksuba that's written during the day can be signed at night, and that's completely fine. I don't care what they were doing in the middle. Whereas it happens to be that at Rav's son's chasana, I mean, they were at the chasana doing chasana kind of stuff the whole time. So it's no surprise that Rav didn't have a problem with it. The Tanya, as we learn in the Brisa, Amar Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok lo shanu, that when they say that a document can not be written during the day and signed at night, ela b'she'ein asukim b'oso inin, that's only if they're not busy with the topic of the document the whole time. If the whole time though they're busy with the topic of the document, so then everyone would agree that it's okay. Meaning if you're writing the document and you start writing it during the day, and the sofer is writing it and he's writing it and he's writing it, and it becomes nighttime and he's still writing it, so of course they could sign the document whenever it's finished, and then that would be fine. So it's not necessarily a proof that Rav holds like Shmuel, because after all, they were busy talking about, they're busy with the chasana stuff the whole time, so it's okay that the ksuba, at least in that case, was written during the day and signed at night. Reb Shimon machshir. So going back to Reb Shimon's opinion in the Mishnah. Right, so Reb Shimon, of course, right, so the Mishnah, of course, it talked about if you have a get, right, so the Mishnah said that a get that's written during the day and signed at night is a problem, is no good. If it's written during the day and signed at night, it's a problem. If it's written during the day and signed at night, it's a problem. Reb Shimon says it's okay. Reb Shimon says that it's okay. Now we had explained that according to Reb Shimon, he says that the whole point of the date in the get, that the whole point of the date on the get is with regards to Paris, right? So Reb Shimon says, as we're about to see in a second, that Reb Shimon says that from the time that he makes up his mind, at the time from the husband makes up his mind to get divorced, at that point he can no longer get any benefit from the nichsei milug, from the fruits of the nichsei milug, and therefore makes sense that according to Reb Shimon, right, the Reb Shimon holds that from the time that he makes up his mind, he can no longer get benefit from the Paris nichsei milug. So even if he writes it during the day, so from that point, he can no longer get benefit from the nichsei milug. Even if he signs it at night, it's fine, because at the time that they wrote it during the day, already from that point, he can't get benefit from the nichsei milug, and therefore, when the document is written during the day, and has that date on it, at the end of the day, he would no longer, meaning at the end of the day, like the phrase, not at the end of the day, like at Shkia, but meaning ultimately, he can't get benefit from the nichsei milug from that point, because that's when he made up his mind that they're going to get divorced. So I'm a Rav, my time to Reb Shimon. So Rav says, how come Reb Shimon says that if you have a get that's written during the day and signed at night, it's okay? Kasover, because he holds because once he makes up his mind to get divorced, he can no longer benefit from the nichsei milug. And therefore, from the time that it's written, and that date, at the time that it's written, is the time that he can no longer benefit from the nichsei milug. Amr Rish Lakish says, Rish Lakish lo hichshem Reb Shimon ela la'alter. Now says Rish Lakish that when Reb Shimon says that you can have a get written during the day and signed at night, that is dafka immediately, right? Meaning you write it during the day, you sign it at night. That's okay according to Reb Shimon, says Rish Lakish. Aval mikan v'ad asara yomim, lo. But yesh gvul. You can't write it today and then sign it 10 days later. That's not okay. You can sign it today, you can write it today and sign it tonight. You can't write it today and sign it 10 days later. Chayshin and Shema Piyes, because we're concerned, right? We talked about earlier a get yoshon, that if you have a get that's written and then they have bia after that, so that's what's called a get yoshin, and it's no good. So we say, so here also, right? So while Reb Shimon says that you can write it during the day and sign it at night, you can't wait 10 days, because over that time we're concerned that maybe they made up with each other, at least temporarily, enough to have bia, and then we're concerned that it's a get yoshin. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, whereas Rabbi Yochanan says, Afilu mikan v'ad asar yomim. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says that Reb Shimon would say that just like you could write it today and sign it tonight, you can write it today and sign it 10 days later. That's fine. If it's true that they made up, then the antis in the bungalow colony on Shabbos afternoon would know. And they would know, oh, they made up, you heard, they made up, and then obviously then you wouldn't be able to rely on that shtar anymore. So if they did in fact make up, people would know, and then obviously know not to rely upon the shtar. Itmar, it was stated, Omer la asore, if the husband says to 10 fellows, Kisvu get leishti, write a divorce document, write a get for my wife. Omer B'Yechanan, says Rabbi Yechanan, Shnaim mishum edim v'chulam mishum tnai. V'Rish Lakish Omer kulam mishum edim. What does this mean? So Rabbi Yechanan says that if a fellow says to 10 people, he says, write me a get. So the first 2 of the 10 will be the witnesses on the document. The other 8 aren't witnesses. It becomes like a t'nai. Basically, says Rashi, the husband is shtickle shmendrik, and he wants to make this process as modern as possible for his wife. He wants to shtickle embarrass her. He wants as many people, he wants a lot of people to know that she's getting divorced. And he says, look, while I know that all you need is 2 people to sign on the divorce, I'm saying though that this divorce, this get, is only going to be valid if there are 10 people signed on it, because I want a lot of people to know about it and to make a whole to-do out of it. So says Rabbi Yechanan that the first 2 are the actual witnesses. The rest of the 8 aren't actually witnesses. It becomes like a condition, right? Basically what he's saying is, I'm writing this document under the condition that there are 10 people who sign on it. Now, not all 10 of them are the witnesses who are signing. 2 of them are the witnesses who are signing. The other 8 are just to fulfill his condition. Now, Rish Lakish argues, and he says, no, all 10 of them are witnesses. Okay, we're going to ask in a minute, okay, what's the nafkaminas? Okay, so again, so Rish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan, it says, Rabbi Yochanan, Shnai mishum edim, v'chulam mishum t'nai. So 2 of them are witnesses, and the rest of the 8 are just fulfilling his condition, that there be 10 people signed. Rish Lakish, kulam mishum edim. Whereas Rish Lakish says, all 10 of them are the witnesses. All 10 of them are the witnesses. Hey Chidami. Now, what is the case in which all 10 of them would actually even have to sign? If he didn't say all of you, if he didn't say kulchem, all of you, write a get. But if that's the case, we learn in the Mishnah, Amar la Asara, that if a fellow says to 10 people, Kisvu get leishti, write a get for my wife. Now he didn't say kulchem, he just said write a get for my wife. Echad kosev v'shnayim chosmins. Okay, so one of them writes the get, 2 of them sign it, and that's that. So it must be that he said to them, kulchem, all of you. And if that's the case, so then all of them have to sign on the get. Fine. Now my benayu, what's the nafkamina? Right? Rabbi Yechanan said the first 2 are witnesses. The rest of the 8 are just a condition. Rish Lakish says that all 10 of them are witnesses. What's the nafkamina? So Ike benayu, the nafkamina is Tichasum Bei Trei Minayu Biyome V'inoch Mikan Varasora Yomim. So what happens if 2 of them sign immediately and the rest of the 8 sign 10 days later? Right? We had said earlier that according to Rish Lakish, right? We had said earlier that according Right. Okay. So one second. So Rashi says, "Umadam mishum edim pasod lo have edu shlema at shachtem kulam v'chevan dechulam lo chasmu v'yom ksivaso have le muktam." Okay, fine. Right. So we had said in our Mishnah, that a get that you sign that a get that is written during the day and signed at night, the Chacham said is possible. So according to Rabbi Yechanan, who says that in a case where the first 2 signed that day, and the rest of the 8 signed up to 10 days later. So if you say, like Rabbi Yechanan, that the first 2 are the witnesses, the rest of the 2 are not. The rest of the 8 are not actually the remaining 8 are not actually the witnesses. They are just fulfilling the condition that there must be 10. Well, if that's the case, then it's fine, because the 2 necessary witnesses signed that day. The rest of them are just to fulfill the condition. And if you fulfill the condition, later on, that's fine. But according to Rish Lakish, who says that all of them are witnesses, well, you would need all of them to sign that day, and they didn't. So therefore, it would be possible according to Rish Lakish, right? So again, right? So my benai, what's an afkamina? Ika benai dechosum beitrei minayu biyomei. If that day 2 of them signed the get, ve'inoch mikan vad asar yomim, and the rest of the 8 signed up to 10 days later. Manda Amar Mishum Tnai Kosher. So Rabbi Yechanan, who says that it's about that the remaining 8 are just to fulfill the condition, well, it's no problem, right? You had 2 of them sign that day, it's a kosher get, and Beseder, just as long as as long as the rest of them sign it over the next 10 days or whenever it is, so that's fine. I imagine even if it's more than 10 days, it's probably okay as well. The point is, I assume what it means is that the point is that the condition is met. But if you're Rish Lakish, who says that all of them are Eidim, well then, possible, it's a problem, because you didn't get it signed on that day, and you can't, according to the Chacham, a get that's written on one day and right during the day and written at night is possible. Inami, alternatively, Kigon Shenimtza Echad Mehem Karv Apostle. What if one of the witnesses turns out to be a relative, right? Two of the witnesses turn out to be relatives, or one of them turns out to be Apostle Le'edus for whatever reason. So the Mandamar Mishum Tnai Kosher. So according to the Mandamar, who says, look, you only need 2 kosher witnesses. The rest of them are just for the condition. So, right, to fulfill the condition, the stipulation. So Beseder, even if one or 2 of them are not kosher witnesses, well, only 2 of them need to be kosher witnesses. So the 2 of them, right? So 2 of them that are kosher witnesses will be the 2 kosher witnesses. The rest of them are just fulfilling a condition that there must be 10 people signed on it. But according to Rish Lakish, who says that all of them are witnesses, well then all of them have to be kosher. And if you have a Karev apostle, then it will be a problem. Now, Karev apostle. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that 2 of them are witnesses and the rest of them are just fulfilling the condition, what if the first 2 are, let's say, brothers? So then, Amri la kosher, Amri la apostle. So you can argue that it's kosher, you can argue that it's apostle. Amri la kosher, you can argue that it's kosher. Tanai, because you'll just say that it's a condition, and clearly he didn't intend for apostle witnesses to be the 2 witnesses. He intended for kosher witnesses to be witnesses. So clearly, if the first 2 are problematic, so just have them be part of the condition and contingency, and have the 2 kosher ones be the kosher witnesses. Amrila apostle also the chlufa b'shtar is the amma. But there are those who say that no, if the first 2 are problematic, so then it's possible, because we don't want people to get the wrong idea to think that witnesses can be possible, because after all, right, if the first 2 they might think that the first 2 are the real the real witnesses, and if they're Karev apostle, they might think that in general you can have witnesses who are Karev apostle, which is a problem. So therefore, maybe it should not be okay. Okay, so it's machlokas if it's kosher or not, if the first 2 are problematic. Hahu de Omar, right, meaning assuming that it's the condition one, right? If you say all 10 of them are witnesses, well then there's nothing to talk about, because all 10 of them would have to be kosher. But if you say the first 2 are the witnesses, but the rest of them are just to fulfill a stipulation, so if the first 2 are problematic, machlokas whether it's kosher or not. Hahu de Omar lehu lasar, a fellow says to 10 people, kisvu get leishti, write a get to my wife. Chosum bei trei minau beyome, and on that day 2 of them signed. Ve'inoch mikan Barasar Yomim, and the rest of them signed over the course of 10 days. Also, the Kame to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, the fellow came before Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi to understand, is this get a kosher get or not? So it says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, this is clearly like Reb Shimon, and Beseder, it's, obviously Yochav Rab Malacha Kirabim, but Kedayu Reb Shimon, this Muchalav B'Shas Adchak. Look, if this is the get that you have, so you can rely upon Reb Shimon. So first of all, from the fact that he's saying it's Reb Shimon and not the Rabbanon, clearly he's assuming, like Rish Lakish, that all of them are witnesses, right? Because if you say like Reb Yochanan, I don't know if I just said Reb Shimon. What? From the fact that he's saying it's Reb Shimon and not the Rabbanon, which means that it's talking about a get muktam, it's talking about a get that's written on one day and signed on another day. Clearly he's holding like Rish Lakish, who says that all of them are witnesses, right? Because if you hold like Reb Yochanan, who says that only the first two are witnesses and the rest of them are just for a condition, well then the first two signed on that day, and you wouldn't have to rely upon Reb Shimon. So from the fact that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is saying that you can rely upon Reb Shimon, clearly means that we're holding like Rish Lakish, who says that all of them are Eidim, and from the fact that it was spread out over 10 days, so from the fact that it was spread out over 10 days, we're saying that it's Reb Shimon who says that you can write it on one day and sign it on another day. But one second, if we're saying that it's like Rish Lakish, who says that all of them are witnesses, but doesn't Rish Lakish also say that according to Reb Shimon, you'd have to sign it immediately, right? Write it that day, sign it that night, but you can't wait 10 days. So, Bahi Kreb Yochanan Sfirle. So, with regard to that, even though we're saying that he holds like Rish Lakish, that all 10 of them are witnesses, but he holds like Reb Yochanan, who said that according to Reb Shimon, it can even be spread out over 10 days. If they made up, people would hear about it. Certainly the Entis in the bungalow colony on Shabbos afternoon. But one second, didn't Rabbi Yochanan say Shnai Mishum Eidim v'Chulim Mishum Tanai? But one second, Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said that only the first two are the witnesses, the rest of them are just to fulfill the condition, and the first two of them signed that day. So it would be kosher even according to the Rabbanon. Why do you need to invoke Reb Shimon? So Ba'ik Rish Lakish Tzvile. So with that, he holds like Rish Lakish that he holds like Rish Lakish that all 10 of them are the witnesses. And therefore, since it's spread out over 10 days, it clearly can't be like the Rabbanon. He says, it's okay, you can rely on Reb Shimon. Now, what about the fact that Rish Lakish says that according to Reb Shimon, you have to sign it that day, that night, you can't spread it out for 10 days? For that, he holds like Reb Yochanan that you actually can spread it out for 10 days. Okay, fine. That was Daf Yud Ches of Masechta Gittin. The first Amud, we talked about all sorts of different things about the times in the get, and then we talked about Reb Shimon's opinion. We saw machlokas between Reb Yochanan and Rish Lakish about does Reb Shimon really mean specifically that you sign it that day, you write it that day and sign it that night? What if you spread it out over 10 days? Rish Lakish says it's a problem. Reb Yochanan says that it's okay. We talked about a situation where there are 10 witnesses, right? Reb Yochanan says that the first two are the witnesses, the rest of them are just a condition, a stipulation, whereas Rish Lakish says that all 10 of them are witnesses. All right, friends, that was the Daf Yud Ches of Masechta Gittin. I hope you enjoy. Peace out.